In this episode, cassette conundrums, training trainers, a new approach to people development, and baby fever.
Oh, wow. Danielle.
I know. I'm going crazy. I was going to do like CCTT, something. But I was like,
Baby fever. I mean, you're really teasing the folks.
Yeah. Fast forward if you want to. It's the last segment. We'll see what's going on. How are you doing?
Don't tell people to fast forward through our podcast.
Yeah, don't fast
Listen
forward.
to the whole thing and wait till the end. It's going to be great.
2.2x.
I'm doing good.
Good.
How
great.
are you?
I'm
Everything
doing
okay?
fine.
Okay.
Thank you. Great.
Lovely.
Great. Happy Easter when this drops, I think, right?
Right. Easter Monday.
Cool.
Maybe?
I don't know.
No.
All right. We're in a time vortex. All right. Mega Church Memories. This is where we talk about what was, what should or shouldn't have been, and what has endured, what we've learned. And we're going to talk about the tape ministry.
Yeah, you remember the tape ministry?
I do. And we can talk about that, but I want to talk about all tapes.
All tapes.
So you start with your thing with the tape ministry, and then I'll derail it.
I was just having memories of, I feel like every church worth its salt back in the day would have a little tiny cassette tape studio somewhere off the main worship center that was recording all things, yeah. Exactly. You push play and record at the same time, and you make it happen. And so those cassettes, and again, there are generations that have no idea what we're talking about.
Google the word audio cassette. It was literally like a tape. What is it? Was it a tape? It was like a film. Audio film, I guess, like that would wind around.
Right.
Oh, remember when those got pulled out?
When they got pulled out, and you'd have to take a number 2 pencil with an eraser and stick it in there. And stick it in there and manually wind it.
Yep.
But
anywho.
So what I was thinking about was but these cassette tapes are not like a typical digital library, which doesn't take up any space. Right. These were, you would have walls and walls of cassette tapes. I had what made me think of it, I had somebody drop off. They found like some of my original sermons that I ever preached on cassette.
Wow, if you're ever on a 2020 special, they'll be pulling those out.
Exactly.
Nice.
Let's pray that that doesn't
reason
happen.
Too.
Okay, all right.
It doesn't have to be bad. I guess 2020
is so positive.
Yeah, sorry.
But the funny part is, and I'll let you get your. But one of the things I remember is like if you were a really big happening church, and you had your own church library or church bookstore, like I remember going to Willow back in the cassette tape days, they would have these folders of
like a
trapper keeper of this 30 set sermon series on 30 cassettes.
And you just like put it in your
car. In a book. Remember, you had to pull them out of a little plastic mold.
I can feel it.
Yeah, you can feel it, and you gotta whip it out of that plastic mold. I remember one guy, one day in church, he came up to me with one of those big trapper keeper size things, handed me, this 20 tape set on Bible prophecy that's changed my life. I want you to listen to it. And so it's like you go through tape number 1. I did a couple.
Oh.
But tape number 1, tape number 2, you have to make sure you put it back in there.
Rewind.
Anyway,
rewind,
it just had these really rewind.
Be kind and
rewind.
Mm-hmm.
That was Blockbuster.
That was Blockbuster.
Yeah, that's great. So speaking of Blockbuster, there's other tapes.
Well, when I read tape ministry, my mind went, and I knew what you were talking about, but my mind went to like our own tape ministry, which was setting up a VHS recorder.
Right.
And we would do like these really cool videos for kids. This is what I remember. This was one of my first exposures to your media brain.
Right.
Creative brain.
Oh, wow.
Hey, we're having this thing where seniors are graduating and we do these video montages of photo montages of them growing up. And I'm thinking...
retrospective.
Yeah, I'm thinking like, oh yeah, we're going to glue some pictures to a board and everyone's going to get a board and you rock in with this handy cam. And it's like up on a tripod, and you're like, slide picture 1.
Yep.
Record. Pause. Stop.
Right.
Record.
Hours.
And then when we would, that was editing. That was the editing room. Mm-hmm. And then we would do.
Well, that was capture.
Pardon.
Yeah.
And then we would do like double and triple VHS wired to a TV. Mm-hmm. Pause. Record. Rewind.
Yeah.
Like one person's hitting record when the one person gets the other one to the right place. That's how we used to make videos for youth ministry.
Get to the master VHF.
Yeah.
And then you had to time it with music.
Yep.
Because we wanted it to be very emotional.
Yeah.
So playing on the screen, all of these pictures through a child's life with, watercolor ponies or whatever.
But we seriously figured that stuff out. It would be like across the room. 1, 2, 3, click. Hey, that was my tape ministry. But yeah,
that's good. Yeah, those are fun memories. Any lasting benefits,
well,
Danielle?
of yours, yes.
Yeah.
For sure.
So yeah, I think about like that was the time that really technologically that you were able to capture stuff for, I mean, I suppose audio you could, like radio ministry or whatever kind of predated
more live-ish.
this.
Yeah.
But like for your church to kind of capture your service.
Yeah, it's cool.
And we had a whole team that was driving around Erie County taking these cassette tapes to shut-ins and people that couldn't make it to church. And how many cassettes do we need? Oh, the duplication wasn't even. Remember the duplicator? And like you do 1-to-1, but like, man, if you could get a 1-to-6 duplicator, you were sick.
Yeah, because you popped them in, right? Bum,
yeah,
bum,
boom,
bum,
boom,
yeah.
boom, boom. All the empties and all the master.
We even did it to CDs too. Once
we
CDs
did.
came in, and then we had
That's
those
right.
towers. Oh my word!
Yeah. So, but being able to connect people with a church that couldn't be in church, like you think about online ministry right now, it's essentially what it does. But this is the forerunner. So yeah, it's kind of funny.
The time we used to spend.
The tape ministry.
Love it.
Boom.
Boom. Okay. Training notes. This is the section of the podcast we dedicate to overflow from staff trainings and things that you're working on, thinking on, Q&As, whatnot. So you wanted to talk today about training staff trainers.
Yeah. So we're about to have Diane on here. So she was one of these staff trainers that were in this little training that we did. So we're doing now a quarterly event for our staff where we have I'll do it like a main session, but then we'll have a few of our staff train the rest of our staff on something that they're passionate about or particularly good at or whatever. And so we've started this little pre-session where we kind of train them on how to be how to do one of these well. And so I've developed kind of a little bit of a template that we're going to be using for that, and among many other things. But basically there's kind of five parts to it. So it's telling them to define their primary objective. This is a very important aspect. So they want to answer the question, what will the learner be able to do as a result of this training? And so again, we're framing that in do terms and not know terms.
Cool.
So it's not what do we want them to know, what do we want them to be able to do? And so a training is very action oriented. And so that primary objective in one sentence, what do we want them to be able to do? Then this framing introduction that we've talked about before with Dave and Shane recently on a podcast, but just, it's this concept. You want to get the people talking before the trainer starts talking. So autobiographical question, turn to the person next to you and share a time when you blank, blank, blank. And something that has to do with what you're about to train on will kind of get them into learning mode. And so what's your primary objective? What's your introduction going to be like? And then this is basically the three-part thing. So there's a lesson. And so the lesson is just, what am I presenting to you? Compelling, actionable points, a really good hook. How do I get people engaged in the topic? Biblical truth, visuals, whatever. This is kind of more the teaching section, but you're giving them content or ideas around this subject. And we want to provide a high quality example of that thing in real life.
Yeah,
so part of the lesson is, here's some principles, here's an example of this in action. Then we move to lab, and this is kind of what makes it more of a training. So this is where we're helping the learners to engage in the material with active participation, collaboration, and practice. And so these are exercises, role-playing, problem-solving, brainstorming, discussion questions. But they're working together now to experience the principles that we just presented. And then the last part is life. And so we want to empower the people in that training to really translate what they've learned into actionable steps in their everyday life. And so like for our staff, it'll be more, what can you do next week, on your team to put this thing into practice. And so really kind of narrowing it down then to what is one specific next step or action step that they can take.
Okay.
So that's kind of the flow and framework. And so I did a little training around that. I tried to build the training so that meta, so that
that's cool.
We were actually doing it as we were going. And I think it was helpful. I just know from last time was great, but from last time to this time, putting this thing in here, these are going to be awesome.
Oh,
like
sweet.
People, I think, are going to feel more equipped. And so it's training our staff in the process of having them train other people.
It's
you know
cool.
what I mean? So it's like a challenge to those who are training as well. A new challenge.
So I know every the point of this is it's not like one size fits all, but would you say in general, like between lesson, lab, and life, would you spend most of your time on lab?
Yeah. So the way I present it to them, like if we're having a 45 minute thing, I would say depending on the person and the content, we want to do 15 to 20 on lesson, 15 to 20 on lab.
Okay.
And life is pretty short.
Quick,
it's more
it's
of it's like a 5 minute at the end.
Yeah.
But depending on which way it leans, but I'm seeing lesson and lab is pretty equal in time.
Okay, that's helpful. Yeah.
And then, obviously your beginning has to be good, but, and then that life thing, you want to allow a couple minutes at the end for people to really internalize, what am I going to do with this?
Okay. Yeah, that's great.
But that's way different than a teaching structure that's like lesson is everything.
Right.
There's no lab.
Right.
And it's more
Sometimes
just like,
there's life.
And sometimes there's a life application kind of thing.
Well, that's cool.
Yeah. So
That's
it's leveling that out. And I think people walked away feeling like it was very helpful, and
cool.
they've got a good format to lead from.
That's sweet. I feel like a baby step too for somebody might be who's listening. Like if you're not ready to deep dive into the training thing, I've experienced this in my own, even just leading meetings or discussions. Like what you said at the beginning, like if you can get people talking before you're talking, you will notice a huge difference. Like one baby step would be just start with a question.
Yep.
And you'll see big
it's an engagement thing.
Exactly.
So now suddenly they're part of it.
It's
not like I'm spectating and you're dumping stuff onto me. It's like we're in this together.
Yeah, right. I love it.
And that helps the engagement process.
That's sweet. Okay, cool. As we tweak our assimilation model to have more of a disciple-making focus and invent a multiplication funnel to awake the lake and reach our region, we're learning as we go. Each week, we want to have a topic to discuss in front of you and a practical moment of learning that week. And today's topic is taking a new approach to developing people. And we have Diane Wright with us today. Hi.
Hey, Diane.
Hi.
So glad to have you.
Thank you.
Diane started coming to Grace around 2002-ish. One of her claim to fame with us anyway is she moved us from our small neighborhood church to our current ministry center, and that was no small task. That was a lot of Polaroids and things. But then you guys moved for a while. That was devastating to all of us.
Right.
Moved out of town.
Right.
Yeah, left us alone.
Yeah.
Came back with us in 2019. Thank you, Jesus.
Right.
And
That's
Diane is married to Cleve. They have Emma and Chloe, and you're a new grandma. Which
Mimsy.
is so cool.
Thank you.
Mimsy.
Uh-oh.
So Mimsy is...
Don't talk to my wife.
What's Kim?
Grandma. She would prefer grandmother.
She would prefer Kim.
She would prefer Kim. None of these weird words.
Yeah, whimsical.
Okay,
Mimsy.
So it's whimsical.
Whimsical.
So I'm the taskmaster in our family, very responsible, task-oriented, all the things. And as a grandmother, I have relinquished my decision-making.
I'll believe it when I see it.
My responsibility. I'm practicing. You can ask my children.
Oh, wow.
And I'm all fun. All fun, all the time.
Wow.
Mimsy.
So this
is
is
a
like
new
a
era.
little name
Metamorphosis.
change, the whole
wow.
persona
It's
change.
That's
biblical.
exactly
It
right.
is biblical.
Yeah.
Huh.
Wow.
So I'm staying in the back seat.
This is Saul become Paul. This is
Yeah.
Abram become
baby.
Abraham.
And it's a blast.
Mimsy.
That's right.
Well, you need to. So, can we summon Mimsy here? Yeah. Like at Grace? Can we
good luck with that.
No, we do not want Mimsy.
I
We don't
started
want
saying-
Mimsy?
No, I do not want her.
Yeah, that's not my role on staff.
If she starts going Mimsy on us, we're in trouble.
Yeah, exactly.
If you hear me say, I need Mimsy in this meeting,
That's fine.
right?
Yeah.
Because maybe once in a
Once
while.
in a
it'll
while.
be fine. All right.
Oochie coochie.
Oh, gosh.
she'll
Okay.
come
No,
to-
never mind. Never mind. I don't want Mimsy.
Be careful what you ask for.
So listen, I want to talk about why we're talking about this
Yes,
for a minute.
please.
So we, as we're making this transition into more of a disciple making model and a missional multiplication model, I think one of the fears of mine, one of the tendencies I think that we can have, especially being a church like we are, is to just replace old programs with new programs, and just to go, okay, we're just not doing those programs anymore. We're doing these programs instead, and we still stay a program-driven church. while the disciple making stuff gets put on the shelf. And so I think part of what we identified early on, part of what we've been talking about through this whole process, really one of the phrases that emerged out of our transition is to go, we're a people development organization. And that's just another way of saying discipleship.
Yeah.
But I know that when that kind of settled in, of just going, we're not a program organization, we're not a worship services organization, we're not a preaching organization, we're not a kids ministry organization, we are the whole of Jesus' mission is make more disciples, develop people to be disciples of Jesus that can follow him. And so one of the things we've identified with your new role, Diane, and a little bit with Erin Masenko, some of the role that she's moving into is just to go, we need more people on our staff that are thinking about how are we actually developing people to grow to be more like Jesus through all of the things that we have in place, and help them just to develop as people. And that's a little bit of a different approach than just go to this program, go to this program, go to this program, and boom, you're a disciple.
Yeah, disciple yourself only.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
It feels very end result driven. In the past, we've been very end game, like go to this in hard stop.
Yeah.
And we're saying as you go.
That's
Our
right.
focus is as you go, not the goal is the end result. Like get in that program, we're done, we're out. But we're going to go with you, and we're going to debrief as we go. We're going to talk about the process as we go.
Yeah, that's great. That's cool. So I want to, we'll delve a little bit more into that as we go, but I want to get a little bit to the genesis of some of this because this is not a totally new concept. Like we've tested out some of these ideas before, and you have certain passions around this people development thing, which is why we've tapped you for this role. But, I think one of those passions is just with helping people to volunteer and to serve. And we have a high serve culture here, a high volunteer culture here, and high capacity volunteers and all that kind of stuff. So can you just talk about kind of seeing people get engaged at that level and why that's been rewarding to you? Is there an illustration that you have that kind of stands out as somebody who maybe took that kind of step forward and it's like, oh man, that to see somebody step it up and step into something like that is so rewarding. So just talk about your experience a little bit in the serve space.
Yeah. So for me, it's a passion for me because, as I said earlier, I'm a little task oriented. I'm a problem solver. And so to see people not serving because they see barriers. They see they don't see the match between their already natural God-given gifts and where the church needs that and needs them. To see the gap and to match that. I love being the bridge. I love being the matchmaker, if you will. I love helping them think outside the box. I often say God is a square peg in a square hole kind of God. He's not going to ask you to morph into something you're not naturally gifted at. Like, let's look at this from a natural standpoint. So one of the things we're using now, we've used the SHAPE spiritual gifting assessment in the past, but now we use something called the Real You, and it really looks at a person in a broader sense. It looks at their leadership style, their team style. It looks at their spiritual gifts as well, but it looks at their capabilities and just a whole person. And they've done the background work to see how to make suggestions. And that's where I really see people struggling with, I don't even know where to start. Can you just make a suggestion, And I love our approach that this is, signing up to serve is not the end game. Like, let's see how it goes. Let's see if this is a match. And if it's not, let's try something else. But you talked about like some rewarding stories. It is hard to pick one. But I would say the thing that I see that's rewarding is to see the community that comes out of people serving. Like, they might not be ready to go into someone's home and go in the deep dive of a Bible study and that exploration, but we have a very lonely and isolated culture.
Yeah.
And so I often, very, very, very often see the reward of people taking a step into a team and finding community.
Yeah.
Just finding shared space and building relationships. And over time, you just see them relax, and you see them then go there to share their experiences and their burdens and life, and reach out when times get tough.
Yeah.
And so the community that I see people forming in teams is just so rewarding. And the growth, just the cross-generational relationships that I see happening at Grace, man, that's like fireworks, to see that happening. We lead a 20-something life group, and when I hear them talking about relationships, I see a lot of them in our the common service, a more traditional service. Or we heard recently from Noah, who said that he'd really grown by serving in the kids area. He wasn't married when he started. And didn't have children and he was still in college. And so he talked about how the adult leaders, the team that he was on, really grew his patience with kids and patience with people. And now he's a teacher, and now he's married, and now they're expecting their first child.
Cool.
And just to see how God has grown him, and to him recognize the value of serving on that team and the community that he received from that. It's really exciting.
You make me think of, we have that group of older guys that like the Mr. Fix-Its kind of that come in every month and like do stuff. And they have a wild community. And I just heard a story recently where one of them was having like a heart procedure done, not anything super, super major, but the daughter found out from the guy that works with him that her dad was doing that. Like the daughter didn't even know that the dad was doing it, but the dad had talked to like those guys.
His group of guys.
And like just how deep of a relationship that must be that he would share that. I don't know. And just for that like rough group of guys even, like it's just so special.
Yeah, and it's funny, Diane, you talked about the square peg, square hole. I want to come back to that because one of the first times that this settled in on me, this idea of like helping people find their thing, that God's already made them for. They just need to find it sometimes. Is you'll remember, I'm not going to say the name, but somebody way back in the day, this is over 20 years ago, I remember.
I'll say the name.
No,
just
you
won't.
But I remember this person was like, who's very, very quiet here. Like any of my interactions was with this. He was very quiet, very shy, very just like behind the scenes, reserved. And there was a mission trip to Haiti, one of the first times that we went to Haiti. And I remember I didn't go on the trip, but I saw some video footage after the trip.
Yeah.
This dude was like leading, like it was like Napoleon.
Yeah.
He's out leading the charge and he's giving these speeches. And I'm like, what happened to
found his
awesome.
fit.
He found his fit.
Yeah,
and it was
awesome.
like something came alive in him that I'm not even sure he knew was in there. Yeah. I certainly didn't know it was in there. But like when somebody finds that thing and it clicks, and you guys are talking about the team and the community. Yeah. I'm even going back to just the gifts and how I've been. And what a beautiful moment that is to be a part of with somebody, to help them find that moment. And, again, as I think about this whole development theme of just like, that's part of this deal that like maybe you're not going to find that in a class, but like walking along with somebody, being challenged by somebody like, hey, you could lead on this mission trip that we're going on. Have you ever thought about it? No, I never thought about it, but maybe I will. And all of a sudden, boom, 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 because of these intermediary kind of steps that we're helping somebody to take, and questions that we're asking and challenges that we're giving, all of a sudden somebody's kind of coming alive with how God made them. So I want to keep moving here because I do want to get to some of the people development stuff. But one of the strategy steps that we took, Diane, and you've been part of this whole process all along the way with Clarity House and otherwise, is when we, when we were just kind of thinking about the assimilation funnel, which is connect, grow, serve, or, connect. Yeah, that's right. Connect, grow, serve. That, we we basically said, I'm sorry, it's attend, connect, serve. Attend, connect, serve. So come to a worship service, connect to a group, serve in a team. And that was kind of like, we made the pinnacle of our thing, like serving, and actually high capacity volunteers serving on our staff. It was a beautiful thing. That was kind of the finish line. And one of the things, as we moved the finish line and said, actually just serving even just serving on our staff is not the end goal. It's actually outside the walls of the church, on mission, making disciples where you live, work, learn, and play. We made a decision to combine our groups and teams in our strategy, saying that we think we're not going to ask people to do both. We're going to ask people to do one or the other. Some people will still do both. That's fine. But it's not an expectation. Our expectation is to go, we think groups and teams can kind of fulfill the same spot in our pathway. So just talk about that a little bit. How did that land with you? You were part of that whole process, and so how were you processing that idea of like groups and teams we would ask people to do one or the other?
Well, it's groups and teams are in our discipleship vehicle, right. and we're using the model of connect, grow, and go. Right. And so very often, so I come from a Mary Martha, like that story really resonates with me. And we've seen the either or, like either go deep in your growth in a group, or go on mission and fulfill those tasks, be a Martha, and be very task oriented. And we want both for both. And so we want you to find community, and we want you to base that either Bible study, like group or team serving, on spiritual like fundamentals and biblical fundamentals, and all of us go on mission, not just groups. You're going to grow in a circle, and teams, you're going to go out and serve and things like that. So seeing them as both on mission and needing all of those aspects, connect, grow, and go. So that was on one hand. So you're not missing out. If you're in a group or in a team, you're getting all of that in both. So on one hand, that way. And then for me, the capacity to serve inside the walls. But if I'm also looking for where I live, work, learn, and play, if I'm never home because I'm only serving inside the walls, when am I ever going to have time with my neighbors? Right. I have to say, my husband and I have felt a deep conviction about that. We value the all in, but in our history, it's been all inside the building. Sure. So it resonates with us deeply personally, as well as knowing that the volunteers who serve at Grace work 40, 50, 60 hours a week and then serve 10, 15 hours on top of that. And that's, there's an end to that capacity. Yes. There's a limit to that capacity. And so we're trying to be realistic. I think COVID taught a lot of us. I heard a lot from people that said it gave them a chance to push back and go, okay, let's be realistic with our time here. Right. And if we're going to invest in people where we live, work, learn, and play, something's got to give.
Yeah. Yes, that's good.
Yeah, it's great. And I think just for ministry leaders that are listening going, what does that actually mean to make groups and teams the same part of the pathway? One of the phrases that I think was helpful in us thinking about this was when we said we actually have to make groups a little bit more team-like, and we have to make teams a little bit more group-like. And so, in other words, when groups gather, often the groups will just, like you said, sit in a circle, go deep, study the Bible, talk about how it impacted us, boom, see you next time, And we're saying, well, they got to be a little bit more team-like in that we need to build into groups. What are you going to do about that? That's right. Like, what are you going to do about that outside the wall? So let's activate something in our groups.
Yes, that's the word.
That they can live these things out. And then with our teams who are active already, we said they need to be a little bit more group-like. And so the thing that had to be built into teams was, how are we going to get to the word? How are we going to get to community? How are we going to get to, how are we going to make this team feel a little bit more like a group where we're together, we're holding each other accountable, we feel like we're following Jesus together, not just show up, put in my time, see you next time.
And that group you referenced, oftentimes a group of guys come in once a month, and that conversation came out of community.
Right.
So in the past, they would have just had a task list, gotten to work, end of story, done their own thing. But they get together and have breakfast now.
Yeah, it's cool.
They start with breakfast. They start, pastor often comes in, does a little devotion or prays over them, or, really connects the dots where their service is honoring to God. They're using their gifts. And so we are doing the connection, the growing in their biblical basis of serving, and then going.
It's really cool.
Yeah, I love it. So you said earlier that, and again, we'll just wrap it up here, but that, I think, we're thinking about those two things both as our discipleship vehicle. So we're saying, certainly discipleship can happen all kind of ways, but we're saying the two kind of programmatic ways that it's going to happen at Grace. You can be in a group, you can be in a team, and both of those engines are going to carry our discipleship DNA. Like, it's in community, we're doing these standard things together. So that's that part of it. So, but I want to come back to where we started and think about this people development idea. And the question of, like, how does this concept that we are a people development organization change our approach to doing church? And so what are some of the ways that that's maybe challenged how we've thought about things? What are some skills that we've added in? I think, you and I had if we can just bring everybody into this conversation, you and I had a good deep dive after a training session the other night. We're talking about an upcoming training that you're doing and I'm doing, and that have to have some synergy to it. So we were talking about how do we synergize those. And we even just talked about, like, what does that actually mean? Like, what, for us to transition to, like, really focusing on developing people, what are the skills that are actually involved in that? Or what are the little moments that we need to build into the process? Or what are some even roles that maybe we don't have right now, coaches and consultants, and that's different than just like a teacher in a classroom. Yeah. And so I'll paint a real broad runway there and just go, let's just talk about people development. What do you think about when you think about that? What are some of the things maybe you're working on or thinking about that apply to that idea?
We talked a lot about soft skills and the focus, the word re-emphasizing those, going back to those as our basis. We're doing a deep dive on asking good questions, being thoughtful, having a tool belt you've referenced before, having a tool belt of, in our Dream Disciple roles, we have two really good questions with each of those. It's such a help. And so we can apply that same philosophy to this, to see the person before we see the task. See the person before we see their need, like what they need next. So often we skip that step. And just a refocus on people before task, I think for me is important. And so in order to do that, the focus is soft skills. The focus is good communication, good emotional intelligence, good listening skills, asking good questions, just taking our time, caring for people, understanding how important Jesus' model was, sending them out and then coming back to debrief together, just not moving on till you've tied off. They went out, come back, how'd it go? Where'd you see God at work? What'd that feel like inside you? Do you want to do more of that? Kind of thing, or before we then move on. So those are some of the differences
That's great. So I want to dive into a couple of those, but the first one I want to just frame it because one of the things that I'm talking about, and I think it might be helpful to think about it. So I've developed this new tool. I'm sorry, Danielle, my obsession with tools.
That's fine.
About development going. So when you think about the ways that we a leader engages with the people that they're leading in terms of setting them free to do ministry on their own. The scale that I've developed is going, the worst thing you can do is do it yourself. Okay, so when it comes to helping others, doing it yourself is the worst possible thing. Mm-hmm. The next possible bad thing is dumping, which is what a lot of people do. So it goes from doing myself to dumping.
Are these all going to be D's?
Yes, they are. They're going to be D's, 4 D's. Doing to dumping. So that's what a lot of people do.
Yeah, hot potato. I'm like, boom, I'm out. Tag, you're it.
I was doing this. Now I want you to do this. Boom, Bye-bye. It's yours. See ya. And it's all about the task, and it's all about if you do it well. And we have the next one that everybody thinks, not everybody, some people think is the pinnacle is delegating. So you'll hear a lot about delegating. Well, delegating is still ultimately about the task. The thing we're still using as our currency is this thing that needs to get done, which that thing does need to get done. But there's one more level that we're trying to get to, which is development. Mm-hmm. And so it goes from doing to dumping to delegating to development. And development is equal parts task and person, right? And so there is this relational interplay that goes, I'm not just giving you this thing to do and see you when it gets done. It's what can you learn? What do you need as we walk through this thing together? And so, you talk about the question asking. I want to come back to that because I know we're thinking a lot about that. Go ahead.
Before you go,
please.
I just want to say I can't think anymore because, well, I don't know. Just the fact that you just said using the task as the currency is really huge. And I don't have anything else to say right now. I just want to say that again. That it's a thing between you. Mm-hmm. It's a thing that you can neutrally relate on. You don't have to engage
at all.
I mean, you can do that with a bank teller. Mm-hmm. So anyway, move on. Sorry, just want to just stop the podcast.
We've elevated that.
We have
in the past, and we've hidden behind it.
Sure,
right.
Yeah,
that's been our focus.
Yeah,
instead of this being our focus.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I thanks for pausing there, and actually give me wording as we do this training.
Yeah.
I think that if that arrested you in that way, that's probably a good way to say something around this. But because it does come down to what is the currency between us? Yeah. Because if the currency between us now becomes relationship, and I'm actually wanting this for you so that you can get better.
Right.
It's not to get this task done, although we do want to do that.
Yeah.
Right.
And this is why I think people struggle thinking, if I ask that person to do this thing, quote unquote,
exactly,
it's a burden, it's a whatever, it's a whatever. It's not about that thing.
Right.
That's right.
It's about that person.
Yeah, it's good. It's what, and that is a genuine, I think that's been a genuine sentiment from you for 30 years.
Yes.
It's not fake. It's not this we just need people to get stuff done. That's never been your thing. Mm-hmm. So I think repackaging this way makes a lot of sense. It's really, truly, truly what it means for the person.
Yeah.
Ultimately.
But it can't, I realize even in the pace of our organization and even passing things on from generation to generation and new employees and that sometimes that gets lost, and it does feel like we're just going so fast. I just need somebody to do this.
Yep.
And so hot potato, here it is, get this done. Hopefully you do it great.
And can I just say, some people aren't ready for the soft skill conversation. Sure. They're like, just tell me what to do. I just want to help, and I just. Right. Why are we talking? Right. And so,
so on the volunteer side,
it's hard
you're like,
for
I just need to put in my 3 hours.
Yeah,
I don't need any.
I'm just showing up.
I don't need
guys.
breakfast.
Yeah, I'm just. Yes.
It's
so it can be a challenging new paradigm for them too.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And to bring them into it.
Yeah. So one of the skills I want to talk about is this question asking, because I do think that as we get better at asking questions, you want to talk about currency. This is a means by which we can exchange this relational currency. Yeah. And really make it about the relationship. And we talked a few episodes ago about asking better questions, and the better the question, the better the result, kind of thing. And so I even think it applies to this. If the question of the leader coming in is, how do I get this done? that's going to lead to a certain set of answers, a certain trajectory. If the question of the leader is, how can I develop this person to be more like Jesus? That leads to a whole different set of. So, let's just talk about questions for a second. We can do an all play here. Let's talk about the value of questions and, that soft skill.
Yeah. It makes me, I'm a teacher by training, and it makes me think of an individual education plan. It depends. When I'm thinking about the task, I'm going to approach that no matter who's sitting in front of me the same way. But when I'm thinking about an individual, my approach depends on them, and so my questions are, I have to be present. It very much is as they're answering. I have to be thinking as they're answering. I'm getting to know them and what's important to them. And it reminds me of I've heard this recently, a travel agent versus a tour guide. A travel agent, there's a destination, I tell you the steps to get there, but a tour guide, I'm going with you.
That's
and
cool.
we might, based on your questions, we might point out different things as we go.
Cool.
I like that.
And so that question asking depends on as we go.
Yeah.
It's funny. I told you I did an exercise at a recent training where I had a storyteller and a listener pairing up. And I gave the storytellers, I said, you have 30 seconds and 3 sentences to tell a quick story about something that happened to you in the last week. Then the listener, I told the listener, once you hear that 30-second story, you have 3 minutes, but you can only ask questions. So you can't say, this is what happened to me. You can't say, here's some advice, or this is that. Like you can make no statements. The only thing that can come out of your mouth is questions. And to give them a little crutch, I put about 50 questions up on the screen.
God bless you.
And I just said, listen, we're not good at this.
No. That's right. That's the point.
If you need help, no shame, look up at the screen. I'm sorry, I can't think of a question. I'm going to pull one off the screen and ask it to you.
That's good.
You guys, the people who were telling the stories, there were people tearing up.
I bet.
For 3 minutes of somebody dialed in, listening to them, going, I felt heard. I felt somebody cared about what I was doing. Like it was a totally staged experiment. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But just in doing that. So when I think about how valuable it makes people feel to go, I'm going to keep this all on you. And I'm just going to keep asking you questions about what's up. I just think it's such a beautiful skill that we need to get so much better at. And then listening. Then listening comes next.
And synthesizing.
Right.
And being able to be nimble in that conversation. I mean, let's face it, this struggle, the reason this isn't easier and we don't see it in our leaders more is because in our culture, we are just posting. We are just putting out, it's a one-way communication. That is what our culture is full of. And I'm just telling you what I think, end of story. And we are not good at making space for others and then responding and going based on information. My husband's a basketball coach. And so I think, he's often talked about teaching players to make decisions based on what the game gives them. Like that's his job to give them all the possible scenarios and teach them to be nimble and things like that. Not, you called it programmatic, but not robotic. Right? Yeah. Not one way. This is two way.
That's right.
Our conversations, and to be able to listen. We talk about how people often in conflict are not listening, they're formulating their response, right? So we have that habit in conflict. And so we're needing to unlearn some of our bad habits of communication. And so learning to ask good questions, good follow-up questions, to listen and be curious about the other person and not so focused on what we want them to know, what we have to give them
Yeah, that's good.
That's
Really
right.
good.
All right, we need to wrap it up. But Diane, thank you so much. This has been such a blast, and I know this is kind of a part of our culture right now that we're still figuring out.
Thank you.
And so
that job you're talking about, I don't think we've written a job description.
No, you haven't started it yet, but you are the perfect person to help us through this. So
sure.
Thank you very much.
you so much for sharing where we're at right now with our crew. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hey, your podcast professionals are back.
She didn't say anything funny at the end that we're laughing
No,
about.
we're
It's
laughing at
just-
each other, and you all know it.
Yeah.
So it's fine. I love her.
Diane is
I love
awesome.
her.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
I'm sure we'll have her on in further seasons. She's going to have a huge part in this.
She
like
really
even
is,
just like
yeah.
her heart, I feel like is the heart of that whole development thing. It's so cool.
She acted at the end like, I don't know what I'm doing.
Oh, she knows exactly what she's doing.
She's great. She's going to be awesome.
She's awesome. All right, so something that happened this week. A little random, but let's just talk about it. It happened.
A little random. It happened, and we made a pretty substantial change. It triggered me because you asked a question about this, about like, wait, what do we do again in our worship service? And so, we really kind of changed our baby dedication process from a while ago, and so I actually think it tracks with these other changes that we're making.
It actually does.
Really.
Yeah.
And it's almost symbolic, although it's actual too. It's not just symbolic. But, this idea that baby dedication used to be this thing that we would do on the stage, quick and dirty, get the babies up there, pray over them, have the congregation do a little call and response thing.
I remember Dax.
Right?
I was holding him and he fully vomited.
Oh, sure, yeah.
All the way down my whole everything.
And that's what we miss.
It was so great.
That's what we miss from those moments.
It is what we miss, but that's all.
Right.
Because it was stressful. It's like taking a kid to a wedding or something. It's nuts.
So the shift that we made was to take the baby dedication kind of out of the worship service and make it its own thing on a Saturday morning with site pastors, and then I just think it's Grace Kids leaders, and then it's just way more meaningful. Yeah. It's there's some training involved, there's some celebration involved. People invite their family and friends. There's a little meal or a
cocktail hour
cocktail hour thing kind of deal, and an opportunity to interact with our site staff and kids staff and their teams and things like that. I just think it positions families so much better.
Yes.
It honors the moment, and sometimes we at the beginning it was like, well, why aren't we on the main stage? It felt like a dishonoring. And I think now that we've experienced it a few times, it feels way more honoring to those families. They don't feel the pressure of puking in front of everybody, but family and friends come, and we've got a photo thing.
Yeah, they get a beautiful photo.
Yeah.
And also, I mean, hello, what better service than to put 10 families in the room that all are going through the exact same thing. Even some of them dedicate older kids or whatever, but they're in the same sphere,
right. So they meet each other.
Sphere.
There's a relational component and all that.
Yeah.
So, and then to your question that triggered this, what do we do in the services?
Yeah.
We, there still is a charge in our services to the congregation. We usually do photos on the screen.
Yeah, we'll do like a or it's a group photo.
I think it's a group photo, and or list the names or whatever. We've tried a couple different things, but then there's still a congregational component to it. We want our congregation to feel the weight of like, hey, we're communally doing this together. We're following Jesus together, which means we got a bunch of kids that are coming into this family, and we're kind of all responsible for showing them Jesus, you know? And so there's still a little bit of a commitment moment with the congregation to go, here are some new kids.
Yeah.
These are part of our family now, and I think it just sends a great message.
Yeah,
so
that's great. All right, cool. That's it. So one more episode to go, eh?
One more.
Wow.
And it's just me and you, no special guests.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So
maybe
we'll just
we have a special guest. Oh no, we don't.
No, but
Just
we'll be reflecting on some lessons learned and where we stand, and maybe give a few hints into what's to come.
Great. Sounds good.
Okay.
If you like this episode, tell us by leaving a rating or review. Share it with somebody. Help someone out. And make sure you subscribe, especially now if you aren't, because we'll have a little break coming up and you'll get notifications when we start back up for season 3.
I think the next season is going to be a doozy.
Oh, wow. Oh, wow, guys.
Just a little pre-hunt.
Wow. Aren't you just enticed? Good job. Okay. Also, you can find detailed show notes, related resources at dereksanford.com/reinventing church. That's where you can also subscribe to his weekly newsletter, get all the free tools and posts and all the things Derek related. Thanks for joining us. We'll see you next time.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye.